What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios for episode 6 of building the UCS Acclamator. I'm continuing to ride that wave of progress that I hit last week, and you guys are going to be blown away with how much more progress I've made on the Acclamator. It's been so interesting seeing the contrast of the first 4 weeks to just these last 2 weeks. Just the amount that has been built, the amount that I was able to figure out, and just how much better it looks. I'm just so glad that I decided to restart. This is the first episode that's going to be coming out on Thursdays. So for those of you guys who haven't seen my posts or haven't been following my channel too closely, I'm actually going to be starting a new mock project every Sunday. So this was my old Sunday mock project, and I moved it to Thursday because it's now kind of a side project, and I'm going to be building K-Tony and Moidia every Sunday. So make sure to keep an eye out for those updates. They're going to be really fun, and this is probably going to be, as far as space and pieces go, the biggest mock I've ever done, so you won't want to miss it. All that being said, I don't think there's too much more to tell for this week. It's time to start building. All right, this week I'm going to be focusing my attention on the rear of the Acclamator build. I've got the rear plate built. It was pretty easy. Honestly, I just took the pre-existing plate I had built for my first Acclamator design and then just made it bigger, matched it to the new size of the Acclamator, and then I got the 5 stripes on there as well. Those are pretty easy to do, nothing much to talk about there. I think the next big obstacle I ran into with these plates was this large gap right here. So this is on both sides. You can see I've tried to fill it in a little bit with some wedge plates, but it's a massive gap right there. You can see right into the ship. So I've tried out a couple different things to fill it up. The first one was this method. I got this long wedge plate right here, and then I've got a small turntable right there. I just connect that wedge plate to the turntable, and you can see I'm able to slide it right in place. And so it's connected, it's touching this front panel and covering up that gap. And then down here for this gap, I just used a 2x4 slope kind of like that to cover it up. This was pretty choppy and incomplete. You can see there's still a gap here and a gap there. Plus it also covered up part of the stripes. So after some experimenting and tinkering around, I came up with a much better and simpler solution. I just used this same 3x6 wedge plate I've been using on pretty much this entire ship. It's a very versatile piece, and then just kind of stuck it on the back of this front plate hanging off one stud, and that effectively covers up the gap the entire length except for this tiny gap right here. I did put one of these wider wedge plates right here and then a smaller 2x3 wedge plate on top of there. So this covers up the gap enough that I am satisfied. I'm going to move on. I don't really care that this tiny bit's exposed. That doesn't bother me. And this method also doesn't cover up the stripes as much, so you can see those a lot better than that old version. So definitely be replicating this on the other side. These plates are not in their final position. You can see they're actually just kind of held on by these hinge pieces. This back part's actually just hanging in midair. The reason I wanted to set these up is to gauge like the overall size of the Acclamator and show you guys what it all looks like put together. So this week I'm going to take this off and kind of build the interior frame, and then from there I can stick these back on and start working on this upper area where the bridge is going to be. All that being said, I got my work cut out for me this week, but I'm very excited. It's nice to be back on track again and making good progress. I'm back, and once again I did way too much work without updating you guys. You can see I got both of these panels in place permanently, and it was pretty simple, honestly. I just created a rectangular structure of bricks inside the center of the Acclamator. You can see there's some little gaps in between the bricks. I did this to kind of create as much space as possible and use as few bricks as possible down there just to keep the weight light and, lower the amount of parts used. So it's basically just a rectangle right there, and each panel sits on a hinge piece just angled off the side, resting on the side here. So nothing too complicated there. So what I'm working on next is kind of this upper bridge area as well as this back chunk. I'm not really sure what to call this. There's a section of the Acclamator in the back that kind of slopes down at an angle, and then you've got the engines on either side. So up here, I'm basically going to do kind of the same thing I did down here. I'm going to create a rough frame on the inside here with these plates right here acting as the side panels covering up the exterior. These angled panels are a pretty simple design. I've got these hinge pieces, 2 on each side. They're bent back as far as they can go because I wanted a pretty steep angle, and then they just connect onto these 2x4s right here, and then voila, you got yourself an external plate at an angle, and it planes in very nicely to the lower panel You can see it actually fits in right between those two studs, which is perfect. Then along here on the front, I had to do some more work for this middle section. So on the actual Acclamator, you've got a little section of this dark red that comes up onto these upper panels, as you can see by the picture I'm showing. So I tried to recreate that as best I could. You can see I've got some dark red coming up here. And then I had to build up this section right here so it would plane into this upper area better. I'm going to have to add more either brick or tile right here. You can see there's a pretty big gap right there, which I don't like. But right now I'm just kind of building the base frame, and then once I'm done with everything, I'm going to go back through everything and add more details, add more finishing touches just to make the gaps more seamless, and then have more going on these external plates. One really cool little feature or technique I used on this ship that I wanted to show you guys is actually right here. So when I put these two plates on, you can see it leaves a large wedge-shaped gap right here, and I had a pretty good idea of how I was going to build it. I saw another Acclamator where the guy had a similar gap right here, and he kind of just stuck I can't remember what it was. It was like some kind of double-sided wedge plate right there at an angle. And I thought, why don't I do something like that myself? So I got this sweet little contraption right here. So you've got a small wedge plate right here with a 1x3 brick on the bottom sticking out. Then behind that, you've got another hinge connection, kind of similar to what we have over here, just a little bit smaller with a cylinder on top of that. And this allows me to be able to place this wedge plate at an angle like that. And because it's only one stud wide, I can stick it on a stud like this and basically turn it to where I need it to go. And you can see once placed right there, it fills up that gap very nicely. I do have to do a little bit more work right here, but I'm going to do that back. But I'm going to do that later when I come back and do the final touches. I was just very proud of that cool little technique. I thought it was pretty fun to do and figure out. Moving on to this back side, I've basically, let's see if I can pull this off. What I'm doing here is I'm just running a portion of this back middle section out into a long kind of tail, for lack of a better words. It's pretty sturdy. You can see it's connected to the frame of the ship very nicely. And then I've got these large panels that are going to go on either side and basically create the shape I want. And then I'm going to have a plate, obviously wider than this, that's going to run down the top part to create that roof, and then have another piece right here. So this is actually going to be pretty much hollow, which is really good because when you have something this long hanging off the back of your ship, you want it to be as light as possible so it doesn't create any gap right there and it doesn't lean at all. So right now I've got it secured pretty nicely to where I don't think I'm going to have either of those problems. I think what I'm going to do now is continue working on this back area and up here, and when I have more to show you guys, I will check back in with another update. All right, I'm checking back in with one last update for the week. I got the top part here plated off. Pretty self-explanatory. I don't really think I need to dive into that. I'll probably put some more detailing along the top a little bit later. And then I covered up the back side of both of these side plates, which means excluding the bottom and right here, the entire part of the Acclamator has now been closed off, which is really cool. A lot of progress was made this week. I can't believe Tuesday afternoon of this week, none of this was built. So this is how I stuck that back panel on. Just a bunch of Technic bricks with some half pegs, and then I've got the entire panel piece right here. So these bricks are just here to kind of connect all of the panel together. I think once I get these on and once I'm in that final phase of putting the finishing details on, or maybe before then, who knows, I'm going to go back through and redesign this plate so that it looks better than just, having random bricks here and there. It connects pretty snugly. You can see it fits right up next to those studs right there, and then fits pretty snugly up there next to that 1x3 and wedge plate. So that's going to wrap up everything for this episode. I am just beyond happy with how much progress has been made. I think probably what's going to happen next week is I'm going to finish off this area right here, and then I'm actually going to flip over the whole thing and start working on the bottom, because I don't want to have the bridge and the kind of the tower thing built until I want that to be the last thing, because obviously I don't want to finish that and then have to flip it over to put the engines on and build the entire bottom. So we're going to be tackling the bottom next episode. It's going to be really tough. I honestly don't really have any idea how it's going to happen, but considering I really didn't know much about or any of how this was going to happen just a few days ago, I'm pretty excited to see what happens. All that being said, time to go hit the outro. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I had a lot of fun. It's been really cool to see this mock project come together. It's been so interesting to see the change of mindset as well. The first few episodes, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, or I don't know how I'm going to make this work. And then after I kind of flipped that switch and changed, now my thought process is, how am I going to make this happen? Because I know I'm going to make it happen. I just need to figure out how. And it's been really cool to have that switch over of I can't do this to how am I going to get this done, because I know it's going to get done, which makes me really excited, because that should hopefully mean that this Acclamator is going to turn out pretty well. And this being the first large-scale vehicle mock, really the first vehicle mock I've ever done, you want your first project to turn out well. All that being said, that wraps up this week. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below in the comment section. And as always, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. And if you like this video, don't forget to leave me a big thumbs up. But until next time, happy building.